Good evening, everybody. It's me, Comic Crack. How the hell are you? It's showtime. It's Sunday. A little bit of a Sunday wrap, as usual. We did have a chat earlier, me and Rasa. Sorry, somebody coming downstairs. Hello? What's up? You all right? Oh, you come singing again. Okay, good night. Have a good sleep. See you in the morning.
See you in the morning.
Okay, love you. I knew I could hear some footsteps coming down the stairs. So we had our chat this afternoon. Rasa and myself. It was on my channel. If you want to go back and watch that, feel free. We talked about a lot of stuff. Talked about some movies and TV. Talked about Rasa showed off a lot of pages from her sketchbooks that she's been doing this year and last year and years in the past. She's been talking about. She has a couple of videos up on her channel as well as something up on her Instagram showing kind of a process video on kind of her straight to ink drawings. Cool to see that stuff. So go and check out her channel and watch those videos. We were trying to encourage her to do more of them, trying to encourage her to do other things with her art as well. And we'll see what happens from there. So if you want to go and hang out and watch that, you'll see this guy actually sitting and enjoying outside. It's been really nice. So it was nice to sit out there. Nice to be back outside. I got myself an adapter. This laptop rather doesn't have a what the fuck is the name for it now? The Ethernet connection. It doesn't have an Ethernet port in the laptop, so I had to get this adapter today from Best Buy. That makes a world of difference with this laptop. As soon as I step outside the door, it starts getting choppy. It's really difficult to do videos with the laptop. The laptop is much more comfortable instead of doing them on my phone, having those chats. Come summer, I do like to sit outside and enjoy a drink and enjoy a cigar. So you can see that happening. You can see some foliage behind me. So why don't we talk about some other things that aren't comics right away? So some of the things we've been enjoying this week. Somebody may have had a birthday yesterday. That person was me. Really nice to kind of have some time. We went roller skating on Friday night, actually. My daughter has some rewards for the amount of books that she reads during the year, graphic novels specifically, at this point in her life. And at certain levels, she gets to pick various prizes for doing, I think this year it was 200, or last year, 200 books. The kind of grand prize was going roller skating. So we went on Friday night. I wiped out near the end and landed on my tailbone and fucked up my back a little bit. Not too bad. I'm not in excruciating pain. Not like the tobogganing incident that we won't talk about. But this one, it was fun. We had a good time. There's a roller rink in town called Wheelies. It's been around since I was a kid. Really, really fun. I'm not the best on roller skates. I suck at ice skating, period. My balance is shit. So I do kind of get into the swim of it as we're kind of going through and doing lap after lap. I think I did maybe, 14 laps or something like that. And it was the last laps that I was doing where I was really feeling extra confident. I went around kind of 3 full cycles. And on that third one, all of a sudden, as I was turning a corner, my brain stopped talking to my feet to tell them what to do next. And I literally went up in the air and landed on my ass. Actually felt dizzy and nauseous. I thought I was going to throw up. The pain was that intense at that moment. Sat the rest of the evening out, needless to say. Took the skates off and went and had a good old sit down. But it was still fun. We had a great time. We've been watching Shogun. I think we've talked about it before. I'm loving it. My son and I have been watching some movies. We're getting into some spaghetti westerns. I was talking about this fine gentleman here, Mr. Clint Eastwood. I've got this box set that I've had forever. It has Fistful of Dollars, Few Dollars More, and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. So we watched Fistful of Dollars. It was really great to see again. It got me in the mindset of we really need to see Yojimbo again. So Strangely enough, this week I just did a search just for the hell of it on Marketplace, and lo and behold, it came up the Criterion box set. It's Yojimbo and the follow-up Sanjuro, which I didn't know was a thing. I'd seen Yojimbo a long time ago when I was really getting into Kurosawa, early days of getting into Criterion. So I didn't realize, though, that there was a second film with the same character. So very excited to see this. So we watched Yojimbo on Friday night. We watched Yojimbo. It was nice to kind of see these a little more back to back. The amount of stuff that was lifted from Yojimbo for Fistful of Dollars is really amazing to see. The one thing that they tried to they retained some of the humor of Yojimbo, because it was played almost comedically. There was some moments, especially with one of the villainous brothers, was this real, like, very distorted unibrow and like extended lip and really pulling faces the whole time. It was very comical, and there was a lot of moments that kind of played into the humor just of the scenario. I guess it was odd to kind of see that stuff, but I don't think it detracted from it. It was still a great movie, and seeing kind of a lot of the moments that you then see in Fistful of Dollars, you can absolutely see how a movie like this would have influenced Sergio Leone and Sergio Corbucci specifically. Apparently, he was one of the other spaghetti Western directors that it really influenced. Leone got to it first and did Fistful of Dollars. Even some of the bits, Yojimbo here, getting into a fight with one of the clans and killing a few of them, walking past the coffin maker and saying, I'm going to, can you make up two coffins, and looks kind of over his shoulder and goes, actually make that 3. They timed it a little better, I thought, in the Fistful of Dollars as he's walking to engage with these guys. It's this premonition, like, I'm going to fuck some people up, so make 3 coffins. As he's walking back, he says, actually make it 4. Really good moment. So it was really cool to see how much was in both of the films. Looking forward to seeing the other ones. Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, classic, a few dollars more. It's again incredibly easy to see why Clint Eastwood became Clint Eastwood. The guy is quite a presence on screen. Really, really impressive shit. Also checked out a documentary rather, called Britain's Strictest Headmistress. Let's see if I can share screen here. Hello, Damien, Sleepy Reader. How you doing? I've watched some Peter Boghossian videos. I enjoy some of it. I enjoy some of his ideas. A lot of these guys, I find that they tend to kind of tackle the same topic to death, and it just doesn't interest me as much. Not that I don't think it's important discussions. I just find that I wish there was more a wide range. Now, these one-on-one interviews that he sometimes does are really interesting. He's one of the guys that I find really gives the guest a chance to speak. It's a little bit more long form. It's more rewarding when you have these long form conversations with these figures. In this case, and many cases, people that are a little more potentially controversial. Really nice to hear her speak. It got us thinking about, she recently won a court case. Her school is considered, she's considered if you type in strictest headmistress in the world, her name will come up as like the first hit. Katharine Birbalsingh is her name. And her school is in London. It's a public school, open to anybody. One of the points that she repeatedly makes throughout a lot of conversations that I've seen with her is that sometimes people think that they get to cherry pick their students. That's just not the case. The students come to them. They have to accept them. Now they kind of talk to the parents about what the school is. And if the parents decide they don't want to send their kids there, they absolutely don't have to. She came under fire. She doesn't allow prayer in school. At this point, I think she said she has 50% Muslims in her school. They don't have space for a prayer room, is where it originally came from. They're in this older building. They just don't have space for the amount of prayer rooms that they would need at this point. when the kids are out in the courtyard, kind of playing outside, if they want a prayer, of course, they can do whatever they want. They're not telling them they can never do it. It's just in the school. We have rules about walking through the hallways when classes are on. We have a lot of rules that just prevent these things. So she doesn't allow it. I guess a parent, even though was told this, allowed their children to come there. I think one child at this point and a second one potentially coming, and took her to court over this to try to force her to allow prayer in school. She recently won it. I think it's an amazing thing that she won it. And it just kind of reminded us about, there is this documentary about her. If I click another tab, will it automatically show you it? No, it won't. I actually have to share it. Hey, that's bizarre. So let's share the next tab here. Oh, wrong button. Sorry about that. I thought it would just share the next tab if I opened it. There we go. So we ended up buying this. Britain's Strictest Headmistress. You can find a trailer here, and then you can buy it for £4.50. So we ended up buying it and watching it with our daughter. And I'm looking to potentially pass it on to some members of the family who are teachers. I think there's a lot of things to take from her style. There's a couple of things that were uncomfortable viewing for me that I just don't agree with. Doesn't matter. Ultimately, I think overall her approach to things is pretty amazing. Some of the things she touches on that she deals with in her school, it really resonated with us because it's been some things that frustrate us with our daughter's school in certain situations, specifically kids that are disrupting the class and kids that aren't being disciplined when they should be. And by discipline, I mean, you need to go and sit out in the coat room or in the hall at a desk and do your work out there. You're too disruptive. Kids getting rewarded for bad behavior in certain situations. So there's some things that have just been frustrating to us. We've obviously talked to our daughter about how to deal with those things herself if she's frustrated. We've had some gentle conversations with the teacher about, this is how our daughter is feeling about these things that are happening, some of the teasing and bullying that takes place even when kids are presenting. There's a bunch of things that just don't seem to be being dealt with in some schools. I can obviously only speak about our personal experience. She has a very interesting way of kind of communicating about that, and their school is incredibly strict. And one of the things that she ends up talking about multiple times is that don't quote me on this, but I believe it was for 2 years in a row, her school had the highest grades and scores with their national, and I'm blanking on what their kind of national education testing is called. They had the highest scores, I believe she said, in England, not just London, kind of showing that, yes, we do have the outcomes. It's not just we're strict just for the hell of it. Like, we're trying to kind of make things better in our school and for these kids who are all inner city kids that nobody really has expectations for. Crime and drugs and prostitution are right on the doorsteps of some of these kids who are trying to kind of escape those lives. So it's really, honestly, it's really, really interesting to watch and listen to. She's a really great speaker. Some of the obstacles that she's come up against are amazing. And her ability to deal with these things are pretty incredible. So highly recommend this if you have kids, especially who might be kind of school age kids. But even if you don't and you just find these kind of topics fascinating, it's really, really great. So that's that trailer. So that was another kind of highlight. I'm hearing from some teachers lately that parents are aggressive about resisting their kids' disciplined. So if I'm understanding correctly, when their kids are getting disciplined, some parents are really getting angry about that. Is that what you're saying? And I totally see that. And I think that's kind of one of the things that she does amazingly within their system. Now, every system across the world when it comes to school and your catchment area is going to be different. We have very, very limited choices where we live right now that are within our catchment for Lily at her age. So our choices are I think there might only be 2 choices for her at her age. So I think that plays a lot into it. I think one of the abilities she has is that if the parents, again, at the beginning, before their kids come in and they do like the tour of the school and give them kind of the talking to, she does give them the option that, of course you don't have to come here. So I'm assuming that means that there's other schools that they can go to that are in their catchment. Because obviously, again, there's also going to be limits to the numbers of students that can enroll due to the size of the building and things. But that's some details that she doesn't touch on in the documentary. And I'm obviously not as familiar with their system. So I can see the challenge that teachers have. I can absolutely see that, and parents kind of being pissed off when their kids are being disciplined. And to those parents, I would say discipline your fucking kids then, because even with friends of ours, kids in the past, it's been up to us to kind of discipline them when they've been in the house and done something inappropriate. And parents are really hands off, and I just don't understand it. And I think that's the next thing I was going to say. 100% teachers frustrated. The schools don't back up the teacher side of it. 100%. And I think that's a huge point. If you're going to be in this position, you need someone to back you up. And I think that's also where her school excels. She is the person driving it. She will 100% back the teachers. She, as a matter of fact, she instructs them to do certain things and kind of teaches them to kind of rise to the expectations that she has for her students and the teachers, right? So that's a huge point, Damien, 100%. Evening. Hello, Gore Vidal. Thank you for sending me the link. What is happening locally is that kids with emotional problems are in classes. In the past, they'd be in separate classrooms. That's changed. Yep. And I mean, honestly, that even happened when I was in elementary school. I remember we had a kid in our class with anger issues who routinely flipped desks up to hit other kids and just kind of had these fits and these outbursts. To my memory, and again, as Bob Mortimer would say, at this point, my memory is like faded fingerprints on a banister. So, I mean, I could be misremembering this. My memory, though, is that that child was not told to get out of the room. We just all had to deal with it. And that's been the frustrating thing with Lillian in a couple of the situations she's been in. It's now you're detracting from my child and other people's children from learning and the ability to kind of be engaged and get engaged with the teacher and a little more one-on-one, right? And that's where it really starts to bother me. I want my daughter to have a decent education, regardless of what I think of the education system on the whole. I think, especially at this age, it's really important. Education is incredibly important. The socialization, all of that stuff is incredibly important. So now you're taking that away. Yes, she's seeing a situation where she's going to have to deal with people in her life that may have some issues. Absolutely, there's benefit in that. But when that becomes the sole focus, that's where I have a problem, and it just gets frustrating. And especially hearing things from the teacher of like, oh, yes, we take care of it. And then come to find out that actually they don't, so it's a not an easy fix by any stretch. But I think she offers some kind of guidance. She also says in the documentary that they have about 800 visitors a year from all around the world, teachers coming to see what they're doing, how their system succeeds, looking for tips. And the first thing at the end of the Peter Boghossian interview, he asks her, if you had one tip for a teacher on how to kind of make their classrooms better, what would that be? And the first thing that she says is, when you have a child misbehaving, you need to send them out of the class. She's like, you need to have somewhere for them to go. You can't just have them wandering the school, but you need to separate them from the class. You need to take control of the class. And that's kind of her driving rule, and ours as well. If you have a child that's disruptive and not listening, you need to take them out of the class because it disrupts everybody else, right? So, yeah, and I think, same thing there, Gore. Absolutely. Another problem are administrators who support parents over teachers. Absolutely. And that's, again, something that we've got to try to find a way to have a conversation about and change to some degree. You know, some of those kids can even be aggressive, curse in class, and be violent. They are then taken out of the class for a few hours, but then come back. Well, and the problem that we're seeing in our daughter's class. Maybe I should be careful about what I'm talking about online, but I think I can share this. There's an individual in the class who is very disruptive, and this individual is told that they can't be in the class, but they're allowed the ability to just wander around the school, which I remember when I was a kid, if I had a chance to get out of class, I would jump on it. I think that only rewards the behavior. It doesn't actually deal with it, because now this individual is not having to do any of the schoolwork, sort of has an excuse to now go around and fuck around even more outside of the class. Yeah, you need to have, like Damien's saying here, like you need to set the tone. And what Katharine talks about in the documentary is kids are looking for rules at a certain age. They're looking for rules. They're looking for guidance. They need people to show them what's right and wrong in some situations. They need guidance. Yes. A few kids and parents set the tone for all the kids. Yep. Those kids have accommodations which state they are allowed to express themselves this way. It's a mess. Yeah, and I think sometimes that's what happens too. Like these catchphrases, anger issues are one that we've heard numerous times from a couple of kids. And absolutely, I'm not saying they don't have issues, but I don't want that child's issues taking up an hour of my child's time to be learning how to read, write, and arithmetic. You know what I mean? Like, it's just there's got to be a better way. We can't. And I don't want to beat it to death. Honestly, watch the documentary. There's so much in there that's interesting. There's so many interesting conversations that she has. I can absolutely see why people are furious with her. But I just think that I agree more with her than I disagree. Let's just put it that way. So enough of that. On for some fun stuff I've been doing this week. If you follow me on social media, I've been playing with, I meant to open another window. Maybe while I'm talking, I can do that. I've been playing on social media. There's a bunch of artists that I follow. One of the gentlemen's names is Diego Lazarin. Diego Lazarin, I've been following for a long time. He did some comics. He's done some one-off kind of toys. He's done some masks. I think he was sort of part of me associated with like the Cave Evil crew. I don't know if he did any work on Cave Evil and some of those games that I love, but he's sort of been in that circle of people. Recently, he's been doing some animation, and I can show you right here. Share screen. Brace yourselves. We're going to Twitter. So I saw this stuff come up. It's all his art, the backgrounds. There's some stuff that's digital. I believe these bubbles coming up here are something done in the program that we're going to talk about. But I think the rest of the backgrounds are his art, just kind of scanned in and layered and very basically animated. I thought this was amazing stuff. It's very cool looking. I would love to try some stuff like this myself. I've got some drawings that I think I would love to kind of play around with. He let it slip in one of the, let it slip is a bit dramatic, but in one of the pieces, he talked about using this program called P5.js, which is a JavaScript editor that's free online that anybody can access. And not only can you access it, there are multitudes of amazing instructional videos. So Pat Vera is somebody that I've been watching a lot of her videos recently. So she every single one, let's just go to videos here. 2 days ago, 4 days ago. So she puts stuff out fairly regularly, and she walks you through step by step this P5.js program and how to code. Coding is not something that I am familiar with. pretty much at all. I know so little. It's laughable. I find these incredibly easy to watch. At this point, I've done, I don't know, about maybe 5 of them or so, and I'm starting to retain some of the very basic information. Nowhere close to kind of going out and doing stuff myself. I've still got a lot to learn, but this has been an incredible resource for all sorts of amazing things to do with coding. Some of the stuff that's interested me the most is what I can do with a web camera to kind of a live image, which I'll show you in a minute here. We'll have a quick look at some stuff. The other thing I'll say about her is maybe it's in playlists. Yeah, so she's got beginner tutorials, coding tutorials, Perlin noise, fractals, genitive. I'm not. Oh yeah, here we go. Start here. Creative coding for beginners. 17 videos, and she talks in those. I think I'm about 5 into them or something. I think I've watched the first 5. It comes back even a further step to really walk you through what coding is in general, how to do the very, very basic things like creating a space to work in. A canvas is what they call it. So it's been so much fun to play with this stuff. So much fun. So I'll show you a little bit. One of the things I've been doing, Taylor Swift. I've heard of Taylor Swift. Tay-Tay, I think people like to call her Tay-Tay. I've heard her name. I hear she's all right. Here we go. So this is the web editor. So when you sign up, I've made an account. Again, didn't cost me a dime to do this. Didn't cost a stitch. You can look to pay if you want to. You don't have to. I wanted to show you this one because that's all the code there is. When you start a new sketch, it fills in. This index is already here. You don't have to do anything. When you start in the sketch section, you get the function setup, create canvas, function draw, background 220. Those things are already in there. The style.css, this is exactly how it comes when you open a new sketch. And then you go from there and put in code. This one was a lot of fun because the results are incredibly fun and it's very little coding. And I feel like I could wrap my head around this a little more. Not saying that I fully understand it and could recreate it in a blind test, but I feel like it was a really good one to kind of play with. So what does all this do? We'll hit play and we'll have a look. So this is what it does to my image, my live image. There's going to be quite a delay because we're streaming and everything. But if you can see that, it's kind of taking the values that are on the screen and assigning them to a different size, shape of circle, or a size of circle. And in this case, color. The fun thing was that once it was done, I started just playing around with some of the parameters just to see what would happen if I changed some values. This fill RGB, for example, we can plug some numbers in here. 255, 0, 0. And that'll give us red. So now the whole thing is red. You can still see movement and everything. You can still make out that it's a person. One of the ones that I was really impressed with, and I ended up, you can see I've made some notes here. If you do these couple of backslashes, it doesn't enter into the code. It's just really good reminders. GB 0. This was a really fun one, and this is one that I'm going to stick with. I love the looks of this one. I love the kind of different values that you get from like the various brightness. Yeah, I mean, I can see applications back when I was doing music stuff for some of these online festivals. I would have loved to have gotten into a tool like this to really manipulate the images that I was recording. I think would have been fantastic. So I'm on the lookout for more tutorials that deal with kind of a live camera setting, where then I'm looking for how to record that what's the best way for me to record it. On the laptop, there is a capture function where it'll record video, but then when I crop it and kind of blow it up, you do get a bit of a loss. I'm not dealing with the most expensive and fastest and best processing computer in the world here, so I kind of have to make do with what I have. But it's been an absolute blast to play around with this stuff. So if any of this interests you, again, I would suggest trying it out. So this is, again, p5.js. The editor is editor.p5js.org. Check out Pat Vera's tutorials for some more. Stop sharing. Really, really great. Taylor Swift has invaded my house. Yeah, it's super neat. It's a lot of fun to play with that kind of stuff, because the player's gonna play. Wow, you are really she's infections, Damien. Needs to be deprogrammed. Yeah, absolutely look into it. And honestly, like, that Pat Vera has a really great way of explaining it to you and walking you through the tutorials rather, and every single one, even if it's stuff she's done a million times before, she still walks you through the exact same way to really get you used to. Make sure she'll do an push and pop are one of the things that end up happening, making sure that when any change happens, instead of having kind of tracers, it kind of stops it and pops it back to its starting point again. So she'll show kind of what happens if you don't push and add push and pop to the code, and then explain this is why you need push and pop. So So yeah, it's just it's very rewarding to kind of dip my toes into that world. I didn't grow up with this stuff. We did a version of coding way back in junior high school. I'm not even sure. It must have been junior high, but like, you know, a MS DOS or something, I don't know, Microsoft, and like moving a brick around or something. Or I remember playing some text games where it was sort of getting used to entering commands into a computer. So it wasn't even coding really, it was just commands. But my knowledge about this stuff is pretty much nil. So it's been very cool to check that stuff out. Why don't we get into some comics after a half an hour of talking all sorts of shit? We'll start out with something that I didn't talk about on the stream today because I honestly don't have very much to say about it. Issue number 2 of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, The Untold Destiny of the Foot Clan. It's okay. I feel like it's a mini series and I may just follow it through. I don't know if I'm loving this one. It's been fine. I don't really get too much out of these stories, to be honest with you. Partially due to the fact of I'm not really familiar with some of these characters that are here. Obviously, there's some that I am very familiar with, but others that I'm not. I'm not really taken by the art very much. It's not horrible, but it's just not my thing. It's not my style. I think I'm really in the mood for more Turtles stuff, and I'd like to dive into some of this IDW. Obviously, like everybody else, we've talked about it many times. I'm anxious to see what Jason Aaron has to do with things. I know the issue number 150 comes out, I think maybe Rasa said this Wednesday coming up. And I know there's a plethora of stuff out there, including The Last Ronin, which, again, I will be jumping on. I will get to that eventually. This one, I'm kind of a sucker for these things. I like to try out at least one issue of them. There's been so many. But Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Black, White, and Green, that might be kind of fun to flip through an issue. But as far as this goes, I don't know if I would recommend this unless you're like hardcore Turtle fan and have been following the IDW stuff. You'll probably get more out of it than I did, but it was a little thin for me. But as usual, just my opinion. Something that wasn't thin and I thoroughly enjoyed, we'll get into the meat of the stuff now, is issue number 2 of Helen of Windhorn. And holy fuck, man, I'm really enjoying this book. I loved this second. I thoroughly enjoyed the first issue. I thought it was really engaging. The art is gorgeous. The coloring is stunning. The story was also really great. It caught my attention. This second issue kind of ramps that up a little bit. Now that we have a very, very basic understanding of what this world is, it gives us a chance now to dig in. And there's a couple of really great scenes in this. This dinner scene with the grandfather sitting and Helen kind of making demands of somebody needs to tell us what's going on. At the end of the first issue, we see the grandfather fighting some creature, and Helen isn't sure what the hell she's seeing. The woman that's in charge of her, I guess, or taking care of her. I don't know why I can't think of the fucking word for what her role is. I don't know why my brain just doesn't retain it. But there you go. So they both end up witnessing it, which I think was a really great way to the matron, I guess. I don't really know what the fuck I'm trying to say. I promise I'll get off of that. It's nice that they both witnessed it so they can both kind of decide what the hell was going on, or at least you get both viewpoints, so you can't just write it off to, well, Helen was hammered, she was just seeing things. That would be kind of a weak story point, and we don't need to kind of explore that idea, right? It sort of slows down the story. So she demands some answers from the grandfather, and when he doesn't give her any because he's very kind of quiet and doesn't really say much, she slams on the table, and he kind of chuckles and says, that's not how you do it. You do it like this, and kind of raises hell and smashes the table and knocks all the food around, and kind of leaves, storms off. Helen keeps struggling with this, and the matron, we're going to call her, decides that enough is enough. You need to talk to your granddaughter. And we get this amazing scene as well, too, where she goes head to head with him. And as you can see, it starts off, she's standing pretty far away from his desk. He's telling her that, I don't have time for this. I drank when I was her age too, and I got out of it. So what are we worried about? And she keeps kind of getting closer and closer. And he finally stands up and says, that's enough. When I say get out, get the fuck out. And she just kind of stands there. She stands her ground and continues to kind of talk to him. And I thought it was really, really well done. Just a really great story moment, and amazing to see Helen in some of these poses here. Weapons in hand, bottle of booze in the other hand. Really great. I think this is going to be fun. We were talking about it this afternoon that potentially this is only a 6-issue miniseries is what the word on the street is. I know Tom King kind of likes to go with his standard 12. I also know that it's Dark Horse, so my guess is I wonder if they're going to do 2 6-issue miniseries so they have a chance to put a number 1 on something again. But if you're not reading it, and if you're not strongly opposed to Tom King, I would say give it a try. And this is coming from a guy who has said famously in the past that fantasy isn't really a genre for me. And of course, things change, because I'm really digging this, and I would say this fits into kind of the fantasy world. So it's been great. Let's see. I was more into issue 1, and I'm eager for issue 3. I interpret this as an in-between issue. Yeah, it's absolutely, and I can totally see that, because I think things are really going to kick off in the 3rd issue. This is, again, kind of continuing. Now that we've met the grandfather, let's kind of get into who he is and what the relationships are going to be with the 3 of them, the 3 main characters. But yeah, I could see this, honestly, an extension of issue number 1. Just give us a double-sized issue number 1 to give us all this information, and then with what would then be the issue number 2, really get into the story. Because yeah, I agree. I think it's going to really kick off in the next issue, where we'll get a little more world building. And I mean, from the limited stuff that I've read of Tom King, he seems to pace things in a very specific way. I haven't read everything that he's done. I've read very little compared to what he's written, but I do like that kind of slower pacing. It doesn't bother me too much, especially, again, with a book like this where the art is so goddamn gorgeous. 420, how the hell are you? I did see your comment on the live stream there. I just didn't have a chance to respond yet. So good to hear about Andrew Vack's stuff, which we'll get into right away. Daryl D, how the hell are you, man? Nice to see you. Thanks for joining us. Went to a local con today. I finally completed the inner city romance run. Looking forward to reading. That is amazing to hear. I love hearing that, Daryl. I really hope I haven't oversold it, and I really hope you enjoy it. That's cool. I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts once you've read it. Everybody saying good evening. The narrative frame is promising to get more complex. Yeah, for sure. And I'm hopeful. And like I said, even if it kind of takes a little bit of a nosedive, the art is just stunning. It's really, really stunning. It's actually makes me want to read that. It was a Supergirl book that he wrote with the same artist team, right? Isn't that right? It was Supergirl, I think. It makes me curious to dig into that. I'd like to see, even though I don't really care about the character whatsoever, I'd be curious to see that art in a superhero world. Might be kind of cool. And Travis was saying this afternoon, Oddfellow's thoughts was in the chat, and he was saying that he thinks it might have been after the New 52 Wonder Woman that there was the same artist team working on that book, which I'm also not familiar with. I loved the New 52 Wonder Woman. I never followed it past that. Honestly, I don't even think I finished collected all of the New 52 Wonder Woman stuff, but I was really enjoying it. So I might have to dig into that as well, too. Let's get into Mr. Andrew Vax. And something I said in the chat this afternoon is I've read some dark shit in my life. I'm no stranger to kind of heavy topics and stuff that's a little more challenging and doesn't really show you any sort of light at the end of the tunnel. But I can say that this is probably one of the darkest things I've read in a long time. So in 1992, gotta make sure that I get his name right here. Jerry Prosser. He talks about it in Stalking a Horse in the back here, this last page, one of the last pages. He talks about approaching Andrew Vax to see if he could take one of his stories and adapt it into a comic. Andrew said yes, and they started kind of building a friendship. Andrew started talking about the amount of short stories that he had that were, I think, mostly unpublished. I don't remember if they were all unpublished up to that point. And he was amazed at how much there was and said, well, we've got to approach Dark Horse and we should do an anthology. We should do a comic. A lot of other writers came to wanting to work with the material, as well as a lot of other artists looking to adapt some of his work. So it gave him the ability to approach Dark Horse and say, hey, here's the idea. Here's what we're going to do. I've already got people lined up. They said yes, and it came out it was a 10-issue series. I know that at some point, Jeff Darrow did some work. I don't know if it was interior, but definitely did a cover or two. I also ended up, these were from a local here in town who was selling some books on the Facebook group. So I ended up just getting 2 random issues of Cross as well too. So, and one of them here with a Darrow cover, number 0 of 6, and then number 2 of 6. I haven't even touched these yet. I did a very, very quick flip through them. But I do want to get the rest of this so I can read this series. But honestly, I really want to get the rest of these and dig into this. And I'd like to get into some of his novels too, as kind of a little bit trepidatious I am to do it, because this is not, it's one of those things when I was talking to my wife about it today, it came up in conversation and just saying, like, it felt like these were stories about this seedy underworld where, yes, there's people in those worlds that do want to do good, but they have to do so much bad shit that they become kind of corrupted as well. And they become kind of a darker version of themselves to exist and still do the good stuff. And one of the stories that highlights that incredibly well was the second story in here called Statute of Limitations. And it was mostly a prose piece with just I think just the one illustration throughout. Wonderful, wonderful little short story with an unbelievably dark ending. But the highlight in this book for me, and then we'll look at the credits. The highlight in this particular issue for me was the final story called Hostage. This was just outstanding. The art is gorgeous, this black and white art, and we get introduced to the main character, who was a Vietnam vet who wanted to join the police force, did various jobs in the police force, and was brutal in all of them until he finally got to a point where they took his weapon away. And they said, you know, we're going to get you some training and we're going to get you as a hostage negotiator. So that's kind of where we meet him. He's in a situation where there's hostage being held. It turns out it's a mother and her son, this elderly woman and her son, who's holding her hostage. So he's sent in to kind of deal with the situation and take control of it. And I won't spoil anything from there, but it doesn't end up the way that you think it's going to end up. Even as crazy as you think it's going to end up, it ends up even further from there. I loved it. Dark. It's just dark stuff. So this issue has 4 stories in it. Dumping Ground with art by the one and only Dave Gibbons. This was still really good. It does a really good job of setting the tone for what you're into. Once I read this story, I really started to it really put me in the space of like, okay, what the fuck are we going to get with the rest of this? You know, like if this is kind of the intro story, I can see that we're not in for a happy ride here. So a wonderful start to the issue. And then we get a statute of limitations, unwritten law, and a hostage. Tim Bradstreet does the cover as well as that spotted illustration in statute of limitations. Rick Magyar in Unwritten Law, and then Gary Gianni is doing Hostage. So it looks like a couple of these, or a few of these, appeared somewhere else. Adaptation, art, and letters by Dave Gibbons. Original story appeared in A Matter of Crime, Volume 3. Something else appeared in Stalkers number 3, and then another one appeared in New Crimes number 2. So very, very interested to get in. I know that he dealt with some pretty intense topics. I do have a Shaolin Cowboy that Darrow did with him, and I think all the proceeds went to, I don't remember, was it a space for children that were victims of abuse? Let's see here. Yeah, it was this one here. New issues coming soon. Let's see. Buried in fiction, you can sometimes find truth. Here's the truth in what you just read. Some humans hurt children. Some protect children. Be a protector. Join us in the fight to get laws passed that protect children from physical, sexual, and emotional abuse. Join us at protect.org. And I think that's where the proceeds from this book were going to kind of help Andrew in that fight. I believe he was a lawyer. 420, you can correct me if I'm wrong about that. And we get a little bit of a backup there. So I believe this is mostly just prose, yeah, with some illustrations by Darrow. I've actually never read this, and I really should correct that. I should make sure I put that on my reading pile and dig into that one after reading this. So maybe this won't go back on the shelf. Yeah, so that's that. If you haven't heard of it, there's a little bit more Darrow for you. Let's put that here so I don't forget. So yes, good stuff. Be warned, it's dark. He's a very hard-boiled dude, is what 420 says. Sounds like the world of John Constantine. Cross is great. Maybe you could read number 0 before the others, it being a prelude, but released after the series completion. So don't know how it could change the experience, pro or con. Good to know. And that's what I feel with 0 issues, that they usually end up coming after the fact. So I'd probably read the 1 to 6 first and then do the 0 one just to kind of tie it all together. He was a lawyer focused on that cause. Yeah, involved in the law. Yeah, I might have been wrong in thinking as a prosecutor. I forget. Kate. Wonderful stuff, though. But Jesus Christ, dude. Yeah. When I went to Galaxy Comics on Wednesday to ensure that I got myself a copy of Helen of Windhorn, which was the only book on my pull list that day. My daughter ended up picking a few off the shelf as well. They have another room that has kind of toys, and they've got one shelf of kind of used graphic novels that are discounted. I don't often go in there. It's more toys than books. Most of the books there are just stuff that I'm really not too interested in. That said, though, there's usually one or two that jump out. I haven't looked in there for quite a while. I'm glad that I did this time because I found 3 books. This first one for 6 whole Canadian dollars, Habitat by Simon Roy. This first originally appeared in Island, which was the anthology by Brandon Graham. There was a little bit of Travis was saying that potentially maybe it didn't end in Island, but then once he heard me talk about the story, he thought maybe they did actually do the whole thing. It ends pretty abruptly, I'll say. The biggest issue I have with this is the ending. It satisfies some stuff for sure, but it really feels like this is a chapter 1, get ready for book 2. As far as I understand it, there hasn't been any more material other than this book. So that's a little disappointing. Simon Roy is somebody I'm familiar with. He's worked with Brandon Graham on the Prophet series as well, too. And he's done a bunch of other books, not just that, but that's kind of, I think, the first time that I ever heard of Simon Roy. I'm assuming he's Canadian. I don't know that for a fact, but I'm assuming that he's a Canucklehead as well, as Costin Bromstar used to say. Great art, great coloring. He does everything in this book. Science fiction for sure. Little bit of pulls a little kind of swerves here and there close to the end. When we first get introduced, within the first few pages, we're introduced to one of our main characters here. Let me go backward. Our cadet. So we get introduced to our cadet, and as usual, I don't write names down. So he's a cadet. That'll be his name. Our cadet who's kind of getting an upgrade and getting entered into kind of the hunting party or the security party that we later find out part of his society here on what I originally thought was a planet. Again, one of the things at the end that it makes clear is that it's not quite that. Still some questions about where they are and what's going on, but you think that it's a planet and these are just societies that have sort of reverted back, even though they have this technology like 3D printing that we see here. He gets his own weapon 3D printed for him. They don't have any guns. They don't have any lasers, things like that. They're using swords and knives. And he goes out and the rest of his initiation is to kind of spill the blood of an enemy. We do find out that this tribe they're cannibals as well. They do devour their enemies and prisoners that they take. And so that's the first few pages of this book. We're kind of thrown into what this world is, and they go out on their first kind of prisoner hunt, I guess, and he makes his first kill. The kill that he makes, this person is wearing a medallion around their neck, and he gets it as a sort of a prize. You usually get to keep these things as a warrior, so he gets this medallion to kind of keep as his first medallion, or sorry, his first treasure from his kill. And then we get the first page giving us a little bit more of a look at the landscape and what we're dealing with here, which is a beautiful page as well. So not to drag this out too much longer, but because he's the new guy, he's sort of getting ribbed by the rest of the troops there, and one of them ends up knocking him over, and we get a chunk of it come off, and he sees that there's another punch card underneath. The punch cards are what were being used to 3D print things, so of course he's intrigued as to what this punch card could be and what it's going to create, and that starts to open everything up. He busts into the printer room and pulls it up and sees that it's a bunch of weapons that he can create now with the 3D printer. And the first thing he makes is kind of a Star Trek kind of phaser type looking thing here. And that's kind of where it really jumps off. We start to get introduced to the rest of the world, the rest of the tribes that are on this, again, what I thought at the time was a planet. And it just evolves from there. pretty engaging stuff. Like I said, the biggest disappointment was the ending, and I haven't read too much about the creation of this. I haven't seen what Simon Roy himself has to say about it. I don't know if it was something that maybe he did plan to go further with, and then it just, because he got into other projects. I don't know the story, but it really feels like this was just a setup to a much bigger story. Yeah, so I'm very curious to see if this is ever going to come back, or what the deal is with this one. But that said, though, I enjoyed this quite a bit. It was a damn good read. So if you don't know it, check it out. And then I found 2 books from Cinebook on those shelves. How many times have I talked about Cinebook and European graphic novels on this channel, or comics on this channel? A million. So these were $9 a piece. And these are kind of the oversized albums here. This is Nottingham book number 1. The King's Return, a take on Robin Hood. There's your creators right there. Pardon me. I'm not sure if I heard Paulo Costa talking about this one, or if it was Earl Grey talking about this one. I'm sure that I heard Earl Grey talk about this, that I also picked up, Lucky Luke. I was intrigued with this. I found it a little difficult to follow. There was a lot of characters and a lot of kind of dialogue that I got the gist of it, but it wasn't enough to kind of really retain my interest. By the end of it, I sort of intrigued. It's one of those books that if I came across volume 2 again for like $9 or less, I would most likely give it a shot. It's not something that I was really, really taken by. In this world, the Sheriff of Nottingham is Robin Hood at the beginning. That changes by the end to somebody else becoming Robin Hood. Let's just say, let's not go deeper than that. But intriguing. The art is beautiful, as it normally is in European kind of arts and comics. One of the things that I loved in it was this flashback sequence and the art style kind of changing, what looks like a lot of white medium being used on kind of tan paper. Really, really beautiful style. I thought that was a real amazing way to treat these kind of flashbacks, as she's talking about how this is Maid Marian, by the way, how she first met the Sheriff of Nottingham, the sheriff there. Beautiful stuff. That panel there with the horse is really nice. It kind of is really reminiscent of classic kind of children's fairy tale art from books of my youth. Beautiful. So a lot of stuff to like in this one. Overall, though, it just didn't kind of grab me. But again, when it comes to Cinebook, I'm pretty much willing to give anything they put out a try. Well, I'll tell you one thing. I wouldn't take that. I wouldn't bet against you. 420. I wouldn't bet against you. Yeah, like I said, if I found it for cheap enough, I would probably read it, but I'm not going to go out looking for it. This, on the other hand, so far is fun. We're only halfway through it. I actually started reading this with my daughter. We were hanging out in the morning, and ended up laying on the couch together, and I just started reading it, asked if she was interested. We got about halfway through and had to stop because we had to carry on with our day. And by that point, she was actually pretty into it. She was pretty interested in it. So this is The Man Who Shot Lucky Luke. I think this came out. So the Nottingham, I think, came out in 2021. This one came out, the English translation came out in 2022 for Cinebook. The original edition came out in 2016. Script, artwork, and colors by Matthew Bonhomme. And I'm sure that I've seen Earl Grey talk about this book. A lot of fun. There's a lot to like about it. Lucky Luke is a character I'm very familiar with. I watched the cartoon when we were younger. In our schools, we always had Asterix and Obelix and Lucky Luke comics in French. They were always there. And I always ended up flipping through those. Even though I couldn't really read French, I never really got talented enough to retain much French, let alone read it. But this is great. It's kind of classic storytelling. There's not a lot of twists and turns here. It's pretty straightforward. Even Lillian was like, I'm like, gee, at one point I'm like, gee, I wonder who did it. She's like, well, duh, obviously those guys. So it's not like it's something that's even fooling a 10-year-old as far as storytelling goes. But you don't always need that. It's just a really solid little story. Lucky Luke enters this town of Frog's Bottom. Is it called Frog's Bottom or just Frog's Town? Where's the... Yeah, just Froggy Town, rather. It's just called Froggy Town. And there's no weapons, no guns allowed in Froggy Town, except for the sheriff and his brothers, of course. I think you can see where it's going. There was a robbery of some gold. They're blaming it on those darn Injuns. So you do get some of that stuff, which, again, I've talked about before. It does get a little tired, kind of cowboys and Indians kind of storytelling. I'm not dramatically opposed to it. I just find it a little dull after a while. The quote-unquote Indians being the bad guys. Now, again, in this story, it's turning out they're not the bad guys. It is, in fact, the brothers. I love the kind of coloring. There's some really good use of... Where was that page? There was really some good use of coloring. Like when we have moments like this where we're just getting the black and the one color is really, really nice. I thought there was a page where it really stood out. Yeah, again, this is kind of a flashback, and using that color palette for the flashbacks, I think is pretty appropriate. So like I said, though, we're only halfway through this one, but I'm liking it. She was really into it, so we'll probably finish reading that one together. Just really gorgeous, crisp style. You're not... I don't remember any moment where I found the flow of it confusing or anything, because that did happen in Nottingham on one page where all of a sudden they changed the paneling to reading across this way, but there wasn't. With these books, it's hard to get a book open all the way, so the spine here ends up, you end up losing a lot. I didn't see that it was crossing until I'd read one of the pages all the way down. This one, there's none of that takes place. Here's the page I was talking about. There's none of that takes place. You know exactly where you're going and what you're reading. It's very, very clear storytelling. So beautiful stuff. Yeah, so again, Cinebook. Love having some more Cinebook to add to these stacks back there. If you watched the shelf videos that I did, you'll see all the European stuff I've been able to collect over the years. And I just feel like I'm one of the few that's buying that stuff here in town. So it's nice when that pops up, because chances are it's been there for a while. Yeah. Ooh. Sometimes you can find Lucky Luke VHS at used thrift stores in the kids section. Dude, that would be amazing. Actually, it's a good reminder. I should look on YouTube to see if I can find some Lucky Luke. I'd love to watch some of that again. I found the complete hard looks online and ordered the 10 issues. Oh, cool. Right on. There you go, Gorvidal. I'm glad you discussed it. I miss Vertigo's Hellblazer. In the mood to return there again, and I think those books will do it for me. Yeah, again, like, we're not, we're talking very real world stuff, though, here. Not that Hellblazer wasn't, but this isn't rooted in real world plus mysticism and whatever else. And this is just hardcore, gritty. That's amazing that you found the 10 issues, though. Can I ask where you found them? Was it an eBay thing, or do you have another comic shop that you go to? Was it Lone Star? Because I actually haven't looked on Lone Star. That's it for what I read. Yes, that's it. I haven't continued. Rachel Rising book 2 is still sitting here beside me. I haven't dug into it yet. And I haven't dug into anything else, honestly. What are these ones here? Yeah, no, Ren and Stimpy, haven't read that. No, sir. That is it. That is all that I read. Was there one other thing I was going to talk about? Oh, Russ and I were also talking about, no, that's nothing either. Russ and I were also talking about Lone Star Comics, and I need to start clearing out some comics again. I've got a stack of them out there. I had a look on Lone Star today just to see what from my list that I uploaded do they need. I think I'm at around the $100 American trade credit level now. Yeah, eBay. Okay, cool. So I may look at what else I have and maybe what I haven't put in that list to see what they want and maybe start sending off another package. I've also been thinking lately about jumping back onto Discogs to see if I can figure out that system. Pardon me, I got a bin of CDs that have been sitting in a bin ever since we moved into this house 10 plus years ago. So maybe it's time to try to part with some of that stuff, as hard as that's going to be. There's a real attachment to not necessarily the item, but what the item represents. It represents my life. It represents my musical journey, all of those things. So it's hard to get rid of some of that stuff. The reason I want to go the Discogs route, though, is because I don't think these are 99-cent CDs. They're not $100 CDs either, but I do feel like a lot of the stuff that I've retained are stuff that it took me a long time to find, even for myself, whether it was importing things or doing some hunting online to get stuff. So they're not necessarily the easiest to find. And there's some artists in there that have kind of since that time still continue to produce stuff and have quite a following. So I'd like to start doing some digging into that to see what kind of prices these CDs are going for, if anything. If it's $5 or more, I may just kind of look to get on. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't know if there'd be tons of things that people would be interested. But I mean, I say that, and what the fuck do I know? I don't know what you guys are into. You guys know what I'm into. You guys know that I'm into some weird shit. So chances are there might be some stuff in there that's weird shit. But again, I've really got to sit with those CDs myself first and really come to terms with myself if I actually want to get rid of these things. Realistically, I should. I understand that, but like it's a thing. I'm pretty good at just kind of purging all sorts of stuff. For some reason, though, music and CDs, it's real CDs specifically, it's very, very hard for me. And I don't know why that is. I just don't know. I think I really have an attachment to music. Yeah, and that's the thing. I know I have some of that stuff, rare experimental and noise music, and even some free jazz stuff. Even some we're into Taylor Swift. Hello. Sorry, Gore. uh Even like electronic music. Kevin Martin was one of my favorite guys for a long time. He's got this project, The Bug, that is still going on now. I've got a bunch of stuff of his early stuff. But there's something about that music, because it was so kind of part of my growing up and getting into different things and becoming kind of who you are to this day, right? That music has such an impact on me. Like I've got to sit with that bin and kind of lay things out and go, can I actually get rid of this stuff? One of the things, though, to talk about is one thing that I've wanted for a long time. MERZBOW, the great Masami Akita noise artist. Many, many decades ago, there was an Australian company called Extreme that put out something called the MERZBOX, and it was 50 CDs. It came in this beautiful slip case. It came with a shirt. It came with a poster. It came with a medallion. It came with like CD-ROM extras. It came with all sorts of shit. I've heard the box set a bunch of times. I downloaded the CDs way back then as well too. He still has copies for sale. I've always wanted a physical copy of the MERZBOX. It goes through his career from I think about 1979 to I don't know, mid 90s, I think, 95-ish possibly. I think a lot of that stuff has since been re-released, but one of the things that I'm looking at is if I did sell some stuff, that would obviously be something I would want to kind of go for and pick up. But again, I'm nowhere near the part of where I feel like I can even sell these CDs. I really have to kind of crack that bin open and see what we do there. Yeah, 50 CDs for a guy that's done hundreds and hundreds of CDs. Where's Discogs? If you guys are into just kind of bullshitting. I'll chat for a little bit more. Let's go down this rabbit hole just for 5 minutes. I've seen him live a couple of times. He came here to Winnipeg. And every once in a while, I go to Discogs. Every once in a while, I go to Discogs to see what else is new coming out from him. And I'll go and download a bunch of stuff. So currently in the car, I've got a jump drive with about 10 MERZBOW albums on it that I either haven't heard in a long time or they're new to me. And I just haven't heard them yet. He's gone through all sorts of eras. He's amazing to see live. He's a hell of a performance. This is kind of his homemade instrument and his setup. He went through like a laptop phase. He went through a live drumming phase where he was drumming along with his noise, and they did a tour where he had a drummer touring with him. And that's one of the shows that I saw. But he's been around forever. Yeah, since 1979. So on Discogs, which is never up to speed, they've got, you can see here, albums 460. He's got way more than that because not everything is listed here. Singles and EPs, again, that's not even close to the number of 54. It's way more than that. He's appeared on hundreds of compilations, miscellaneous stuff. But I love Discogs just for this kind of thing. So it feels like this is, I think it translates to Slow Records out of Japan. He's been working with them for quite a long time. And Slow Records, I think, has at this point maybe re-released or reissued all of the music that was put out in that MERZ box. And one of the things I've been listening to this week is one of the early recordings. It's called Scissors for Cutting MERZBOW, Scum, SCUM. Great, because it kind of digs into that more tape loop and not as kind of unhinged and wall of sound coming at you. Really, really cool shit. So, but yeah, Slow Records, I think, has done a lot. He's worked with them a lot over the past few years. And I think their stuff you can only get in Japan. And I don't think many of these have a physical release. Yeah, no, there's no physical release for this one. So I think most of it is a MP3 files that you maybe bought from them. I don't know if they have I'm assuming they have some sort of Bandcamp or something. Oh, maybe I should click on. Yeah, they do have a Bandcamp. Look at this. I don't know if that's showing you, but I'll be back in 1 second if it's not. Yeah, so they do have a Bandcamp, so I should dig into that a little more. Which screen are we looking at here? Yes, we're looking at that one. Okay. Let's see. Slow Down. Sorry, not Slow Records. Slow Down is what it's called. So one of my all-time favorites, arguably kind of the king of noise, him and Masana were the two guys that are kind of the Japanese, they're legends in the Japanese noise scene. So that MERZ box would be something I would love to get. Let's see the listing for it. I'm sure they have it somewhere. Here we go. Yeah, 50 CDs, 2 CD-ROM, box set compilation, limited edition, numbered. 2000 is when it came out. And then here's so this will be the early stuff. Ohm Electric, this will be from like 1979, 1980. Metal Acoustic Music, that'll be from like 1980. Rembrandt Assemblage, Collection Era, because he did a lot of tapes early on. He had his own label for quite a while. Material Action for 2 microphones. Solo Noise. Dying Mappa tapes. Maybe it's not in this box set. Oh yeah, here we go. Scissors for Cutting MERZBOW, so Scum. So this is the stuff I've been listening to in the car for a day or two. Great stuff. It's great driving music, so helps keep that road rage in check. Let's keep going down this rabbit hole. Let's have a look at it, shall we? So yeah, like I said, Extreme Records, I think, still has some copies of this box set left. So this is something, like I said, I've always wanted. So maybe it becomes a goal. Maybe that helps push me into taking a harder look at some of the CDs that I have. That's all just the labels, the discs. There we go. There's the MERZBOW medallion, front and back side. Oh, that's the other thing. Yes, it comes with an amazing, and this was another main reason I wanted this box set. A book that goes through kind of the history, offers a lot of gig posters and artwork. He paints as well, photographs. I don't know how many pages that book is, but that's absolutely something that I would love to get my hands on. Yeah, so maybe this does become a driving force for me. Are you still there? Should I go to extreme? CDs were easy for me to let go of. The vinyl, which much tougher. Yeah, absolutely. And the vinyl is really tough for me as well too. I don't have a huge vinyl collection, and the stuff that I have, again, it's the stuff that I have on vinyl is generally stuff that I've really had to search for. My early electronic music, for example, collection of vinyl is something I can't say myself ever parting with, because a lot of that stuff, it took me quite a while to track that stuff down. It really depends, Damien. Sometimes, like when I go through phases, I listen to his stuff on a yearly basis, and sometimes I'll listen to just a couple of albums, and then sometimes I'll really get into it. Like the time that he had this series that was coming out called 13 Japanese Birds, one album, and that was kind of the first time I heard him with live drums. That was coming out once a month, and you could subscribe to it. That year, I listened to so much MERZBOW, because I listened to those and then started revisiting my CDs, revisiting the MERZBOW collection and replaying some of that stuff, replaying some of my favorites. So that year, I listened to way too much MERZBOW than anybody should probably listen to. The year that I finally decided to dig in on the MERZBOX, the 50 CDs, that was another year where there was a lot of time spent that year just really submerging myself into the world of his kind of noise. But I go through phases where I may listen to him now for like a week, not consistently, not just his stuff, but his stuff will be on replay as I dig into these CDs I've downloaded, maybe for like a week, and then I'll move on to something else. But I do love his stuff. I find it very meditational. I find it very relaxing. I like kind of the sounds that he plays with in some of his albums. I used to collect records when they were cheap, unwanted. Now mostly 45s and CDs. I feel like I only want to collect records for the album art. I'd never play them. Yeah, and some of that album art is beautiful. Hello, Jeff. I love those old videos of yours when you played clips from your album collection. I suppose YouTube doesn't approve of that anymore. Yeah, it doesn't. And there's a lot of stuff that, even the stuff that I never thought would have any sort of copyright, I've had quite a few videos tagged. Not that I have monetary, but the last thing I want is, I don't want my channel to get erased because I've been an idiot and stubborn about, fuck that, I'm playing that music anyway, which is kind of my go-to attitude. But I don't want to not have a channel just for the sake of trying to make a point. No way am I getting a turntable, not going down that road. Yeah, I've had a turntable my whole life. I love records. Let's see. Can we get to the Extreme website? Here. Is it going to open another tab? Okay, let's open another tab here. So present, stop screen, share screen, extreme music. Here we go. There we go. MERZBOX, $500. It still says add to cart. So to me, that means they still have some in stock. Let's read about this book here. MERZBOOK. Music author Brent Woodward has written the biography of MERZBOW and how Masami Akita came to do what he does and why he continues to explore the realms of noise music with such vigor. Various musicians and devotees of MERZBOW have written about their favorite noise musician. Techno theorist Eugene Thacker provides a text on the relationship between MERZBOW and eroticism early on in his career. And it's one thing, there was a podcast that was talking about MERZBOW albums and talking about, because he went through a phase where there was a lot of kind of pornography and bondage and bondage performances and that kind of world explored. And he really doesn't, he's not comfortable with that era of stuff. So I think he eventually reached out to them and asked them not to cover that stuff and not to talk about that era anymore. Kind of gave him I don't know if they went as official as making a cease and desist against them. So they changed the podcast to just a noise podcast, which was unfortunate, but I can also understand maybe why he would want to disassociate himself with that. But I feel like once that artwork is out there, it's out there. Jonathan Walker contributes to the book with a written piece once included with the collaborative LP. Each album in the MERZBOW is reviewed by writer Brett Woodward, and Masami Akita provides explanatory liner notes. Ooh, all of this in a full color book with over 100 pages and illustrations. That to me, the music, the CDs, all the other stuff, fantastic. Getting a shirt, awesome. It'll probably be small and won't fit me. But that book, I think, would be killer because as far as I understand it, that book hasn't been re-released or reissued in anywhere else. I should look into that, though, because maybe I'm wrong about that. But as far as I know, nothing has been released. And then just to kind of dig into Extreme a little bit more, they put out some amazing records. This is one that I would draw your attention to. Terminal Sound System, Constructing Towers. What a phenomenal album this is. There's a few Terminal Sound System albums out there. This one is so great. If you think that bringing together electronica and rock is the same as adding hip hop to pop with the ubiquitous turntable scratching, then think again. Electronica is about the sonic possibilities and rock music is about the power. And this has some amazing bass tones in it, but it's very electronic. He was in a band called Halo, I think was a metal band. But this is a really, really good album, man. I would strongly recommend it if you're into any sort of little more extreme electronic music. A great label, though, that's been around for a long ass time. Let's see. Oh, sorry, I had Gore's comment up that whole time. I love my turntable. 500 actually sounds reasonable for what you get. Yeah, absolutely. That's why I won't get one, Damien. I would love it. Just downloaded it on SoulSeek. Hey, man, the MERZBOW, or did you download Terminal Sound System? If you downloaded the MERZBOW, good on you, brother. Good work. I hope you enjoy it. But yeah. Anyway, so that's the kind of stuff, honestly, maybe I do a video at one point where we talk about MERZBOW and I show off, we talk about some of the albums because I've got records and CDs and I think I've got some compilations with him on it. I don't have any cassettes of MERZBOW, but I've got a bunch of other stuff that we could look at. And maybe one day I'll do a video where we look through that bin. Maybe I go through it and talk about stuff that's in that bin and kind of we discover it together. So yeah, look forward to those if you're interested. All right, with that, I'm going to stop talking. I need some water. I need some snacks, and I'm going to sit and read. Thanks very much for hanging out, everybody. Always good to see you. I appreciate everybody coming by on Sundays. I do appreciate you guys a lot. I've been, really trying to deal with how I engage with the world, and something that I've noticed as the older I get, the more I need us to communicate. I need people to talk to each other. I need people that disagree with each other to sit down and try to figure out a way to talk. I no longer see any sort of, I no longer have any interest, but I don't see any need to continue to isolate ourselves into these individual political camps. I think it's detrimental to our growth as humans. I think it's detrimental to us as individuals. I think it doesn't help us at all. And we need to work together to give back to these motherfuckers what they've been dishing out. Take it easy, everybody. Have a good week.